Chapter 1. The Station That Changed Everything. It was an early autumn morning, just after 6, when the story began. The train station was quiet, still wrapped in half-light. Most commuters moved like silhouettes, calm, tired, already thinking about the day ahead. Among them was a man who had no idea how deeply this ordinary morning would rupture the pattern of his life. His name was John Lentz, 41 years old, an engineer, reliable, predictable, never late, never reckless, never loud, a man who didn't disturb the world and wasn't disturbed by it. He stood at Platform 3 with a metal thermos of coffee, watching the rails. He wasn't thinking about his 9 o'clock presentation, nor the quiet tension in his marriage, nor the laundry he had forgotten to take out of the machine. He thought only in fragments, the rhythm of footsteps behind him, the soft drag of a rolling suitcase, a door slamming somewhere across the hall. Those noises made up more of his life than he realized. At 6:12 a.m., a young woman stepped beside him. Short brown hair, a heavy backpack, eyes that looked both tired and determined, as if she had spent a long night making a decision and now stood firmly in its aftermath. John noticed her only because she chose to stand right next to him despite the nearly empty platform. She didn't seem anxious. She didn't seem lost. She seemed purposeful. She said nothing at first, just looked at him, not pleading, not frightened, but as if she had a question she didn't know how to ask. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet and steady. "You don't know me," she said, "but I need your help." John blinked. His brain stalled, searching for context. He looked around. No one else was close enough to hear. He felt the smallest shiver of unease. Not fear, more like the sensation of stepping into a room where the temperature suddenly shifts. "Are you all right?" he asked. The woman nodded once, then shook her head, then exhaled as if both answers were true. "My name is Emma," she said, "and I need you to stay with me for the next 10 minutes. That's all, just 10 minutes. Before he could respond, the PA system crackled, and a train approached in the distance, still faint, but growing louder. Emma stepped closer to him, almost shoulder to shoulder. "If I'm alone," she said softly, "I won't make the right choice." It was then that John understood. Not fully, just enough to know that this was not a normal morning, and he could not act like it was. He set down his thermos. He turned his body slightly toward her, and he stayed. The train grew louder. The rails hummed. The moment stretched. Emma's breath trembled once only. Then she looked at him again, eyes clear but breaking at the edges. "Please don't leave," she whispered. "Not yet." John didn't leave, and that single choice would unravel, reshape, rebuild, and illuminate every part of his life he thought he had already understood.
Chapter 2. 10 Minutes of Light. The train slid into the station with a deep metallic sigh, its headlights glowing through the rising mist. Air pressure shifted around them. The platform vibrated softly beneath their feet. People began to gather, sleepy commuters, early workers, 2 students sharing headphones. But none of them saw what was happening between John and the young woman standing beside him. Emma kept her gaze fixed on the rail, but she didn't move toward it, not anymore. John didn't speak right away. He was careful, instinctively careful not to say the wrong thing, not to push too fast. He felt something in Emma that was fragile but not weak, like thin glass holding back a flood. "I'm here," he said quietly. "You're not alone." Emma breathed out shakily, but she didn't cry. She stood with a posture that belonged to someone who had carried her pain a long time and learned how to hide it. John recognized that posture. He had seen it in himself, in the mirror on certain mornings he never talked about. The train doors opened with a soft hiss. People stepped off, others stepped on. A few glanced at the two of them, but no one looked long. Commuters rarely looked long at. Emma finally whispered, "I'm wondering what's wrong with me." John shook his head. "No, I'm wondering what you need." That made her look at him, really look. Not like a stranger, more like someone checking if a rope could hold. Her voice steadied. "I had a plan, a very stupid, very final plan, and then I saw you standing here, like you were waiting for something without knowing you were waiting." John frowned softly, confused but attentive. "Why me?" She shrugged a little. "You looked safe." Then after a second, "You looked like someone who wouldn't turn away." He didn't know how to respond to that. So he didn't. He simply stayed. A new wave of people boarded. One more minute, then another. Emma spoke again, more to herself than to him. "I didn't sleep last night." "Why not?" "Because I thought too much." John nodded slowly. He knew the feeling, those nights when thoughts run in loops, when the dark makes everything sharper.
"What were you thinking about?" he asked gently. Emma hesitated. "The last 3 years of my life." A small pause. "And how I ruined them." John kept his voice steady. "People don't ruin their lives in 3 years, they survive them." That line surprised her. It surprised him too, but it seemed to strike something inside her, because her shoulders lowered just slightly, as if the weight shifted. The train's announcement echoed. "This train departs in 2 minutes." Emma exhaled. "I told myself if someone talked to me before the train came, if someone just noticed me, I'd reconsider." John felt his chest tighten, not in fear, but in a strange mixture of sadness and responsibility he hadn't expected to feel for a stranger. "And now?" he asked. She looked at the train, then at him. "I'm reconsidering." A soft, trembling laugh escaped her, half relief, half disbelief at her own confession. John didn't smile out of politeness. He smiled because he felt something shift around them, something real. A moment no one on that platform would remember except them. "Good," he said. "We'll take this 10 minutes. Together." Emma wiped her fingers on her jacket, as if grounding herself. The train's final boarding call echoed. "Can we walk?" she asked suddenly. John nodded. "Of course." She stepped away from the yellow safety line. He walked beside her, not too close, not too far. And that was the moment, the quiet, unremarkable movement, that changed everything. Not the train, not the station, not the fear she carried, but that small, deliberate step backward, a step toward life. As they walked along the platform, the train rolled away behind them, shrinking into the distance. Emma stopped and looked at the empty tracks. "There it goes," she whispered. "The thing I almost chose." She turned to John, her eyes clearer now. "Thank you for standing still when I couldn't." John didn't fully understand it yet, but he would. Before this day was over, he would understand more than he ever expected about her and about himself. And those 10 minutes would become the first light of a story neither of them had planned to live. Chapter 3: The Weight We Carry. They left the platform and stepped into the quiet hallway that led toward the station's cafe. The early morning crowd hadn't fully arrived yet. Only a few people wandered through. An older man reading receipts from his wallet, a teenager balancing a skateboard, a woman pulling a sleepy dog on a leash. Emma walked slowly, her steps deliberate, as if each one helped her reclaim a little more of herself. John kept pace beside her, letting her set the rhythm. He didn't hover, didn't pressure, didn't try to fill the silence. Silence was something he understood. Finally, Emma spoke. "I know you didn't ask for this." John shook his head. "Nobody asks for moments like these. They just happen, and we do the best we can." She stopped walking, turned to him, her voice lowered. "I haven't told anyone what's been happening to me. Not friends, not family, not even myself, really." That last part she said with a small, broken smile, one that didn't hide anything. They found a bench near the cafe windows. The outside world was waking up. Rolling carts clattered somewhere in the distance. A barista arranged pastries behind a glass case, and sunlight reached slowly across the tiled floor. Emma sat, clasping her hands together. 3 years ago, everything in my life was stable. Not perfect, but stable." John listened without interrupting. "I was engaged, planning a wedding I never had, working in a job I thought would be my forever job." She exhaled, shaking her head softly. "Then, my fiancé died in a car accident." The words came out plainly, as though she had repeated them enough times for them to lose meaning. But her eyes told a different story. They carried a depth of grief that didn't fade simply because time passed. John felt a quiet ache rise in his chest, an instinctive empathy, not pity. "I'm sorry," he said gently. Emma nodded. "I accepted it, or at least I thought I did." Her fingers tightened around each other. "But grief isn't a straight line. It's like carrying weight you forget about until it crushes you again." John understood that, maybe more than she realized. She continued. "After he died, I threw myself into work. I handled everything alone. I never asked for support because I convinced myself I wasn't allowed to need any." Another sigh, this one heavier. 2 years later, the company downsized. I was very talented, they said, deeply appreciated, and then they let me go." John absorbed it quietly. "And that's when something in me cracked." She stared at the floor tiles, following the lines between them. "I didn't lose just my job. I lost the last piece of the life I built with him. It felt like everything the two of us had worked for was collapsing in slow motion." Her voice wavered for the first time. "Yesterday was my deadline to pay rent." John's breath caught. "And?" She gave a hollow laugh. "I couldn't pay it. I'll get evicted by the end of the month." The cafe noise around them seemed to fade away. Emma swallowed hard. "I didn't want to tell anyone because I felt ashamed, like I failed, like if I had been stronger, smarter, more prepared, he wouldn't have died and I wouldn't be here." John leaned forward slightly. "Emma," he said quietly, "you didn't fail." But she shook her head. "Sometimes I look at myself and wonder how I'm supposed to keep going when everything I cared about is gone. And this morning, the platform felt like an exit." She covered her eyes with one hand. A single tear slid down her cheek. Just one. But it was enough to release the truth
she had been holding back. John didn't touch her. Not yet. He just stayed beside her, solid and present. After a moment, she looked at him again. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." John inhaled slowly. For the first time since they met, he allowed a piece of his own truth to show. "Because someone once stood with me when I needed it, and they didn't know me either." Emma blinked. "What happened to you?" John thought about that question, really thought about it. He thought of the night he came home to an empty apartment after his marriage quietly fractured. He thought of the years he spent burying himself in work to avoid feeling anything real. He thought of the way silence had become both comfort and prison. Finally, he said, "I'll tell you, but not because you owe me anything, and not because you need to carry my story too." His voice softened. "I'll tell you so you know you're not the only one who's been in the dark." Emma blinked. "Okay, I'm listening." John nodded once, and then he began to speak. It was the first time in years he allowed his own grief a voice. The station around them continued to move, alive with morning energy, unaware of the two people sharing the kind of raw honesty that could rewrite the direction of a life. Two strangers sitting on a bench, trading truths heavy enough to bend the world. They didn't know it yet, but this conversation, this moment, would have consequences far beyond the station walls, for both of them.
Chapter 4. Crossroads. The day had moved forward, but time felt suspended for John and Emma. The cafe around them buzzed quietly with early morning conversations and clinking cups, yet they existed in a bubble, separate from the world. After a long silence, Emma spoke again, her voice steadier this time. "I never realized how much I've been running," she said. "Running from grief, from mistakes, from myself." John nodded, understanding that feeling too well. "Running doesn't make the weight disappear," he said. "But sometimes stopping is scarier." Emma glanced at him, as if seeing the edge of a truth she had refused to admit. "I don't even know where to stop," she whispered. "I feel trapped in every direction." John considered her words carefully. It was the moment when everything balanced on a knife's edge, the crossroads where fear, hope, and choice intersected. "What if," he said slowly, "you didn't have to face it alone?" She shook her head. "I can't ask anyone to carry my darkness. It's mine, always mine." John paused. He didn't argue. Instead, he offered something simple, grounding. "You're not giving it away. You're sharing it. That's different. Sharing can make it lighter." Emma let the words settle. Then, with a sudden decisiveness, she stood. "Then we have to move. I need to see it, feel it, face it. Not behind a screen or a form I fill out. I need reality."
John followed without hesitation. They left the cafe, stepping into the morning light. The city streets were just waking. Cars rolled past. Pedestrians walked with purpose, and the air smelled of damp asphalt and coffee. It was ordinary, but for them it was anything but. Emma led the way to a small park nearby, a place she had avoided for weeks, months, maybe years. "This is where it started," she said, stopping at a bench under a tall oak.
This is where I first felt broken, where I first thought the world could end for me." John watched her carefully. He didn't speak. He let her fill the silence with the weight she carried. She sat, pulling her knees close. Her eyes followed the swings, the joggers, the children laughing. "I used to come here with him," she whispered, "and it felt safe. But now, it just reminds me what I lost." John sat beside her, close enough to be present, but far enough to respect her space. "I lost people too," he admitted. "People who mattered. And for years I thought carrying it alone was strength. It wasn't. It was fear." Emma's gaze lifted to him. A flicker of recognition passed across her face. They were both learning something simple and terrifying. Sharing a burden could create connection and change. "So, what now?" she asked. Her voice was steadier than before, though her hands trembled slightly. John considered the question. The truth was simple, though the path was not. "Now," he said slowly, "we decide if we keep walking together. If we face it, not alone, not pretending, together, for 10 minutes, an hour, a day, as long as it takes." Emma exhaled, a long, trembling breath, like she was releasing air she didn't know she had been holding. I think I can try," she whispered. And with that small, fragile agreement, they stood, two strangers at a crossroads, stepping forward into an uncertain day, each carrying the weight of their lives, but deciding for the first time not to carry it alone. As they walked through the park, the wind shifted, a quiet, steady breeze that felt almost like permission, like the world itself had nodded in approval of their choice. The city moved around them, unaware, but for John and Emma, everything had changed. For the first time, the path forward didn't feel impossible. It only felt real. And reality, as terrifying as it could be, was something worth facing. Chapter 5. A Day No One Forgot. The sun had climbed higher, casting warm light across the streets and the park. But for John and Emma, the morning felt suspended, stretched over hours instead of minutes. They walked side by side, neither rushing, neither turning back. Every step was deliberate, every breath shared in silent understanding. "I'm scared," Emma admitted suddenly. Her voice was quiet but raw. "Scared I'll fail again. Scared I'll make the wrong choice." John glanced at her. "The wrong choice isn't a single action. It's never moving at all." He let that sink in. "You've already made a choice just by being here, by talking, by standing up this morning." Emma nodded slowly. Her lips pressed together as she fought tears, not hiding, but choosing strength. It was the kind of strength that came from surviving, not pretending. They reached a bridge overlooking a quiet river. The water moved slowly, reflecting the sky in fragmented patches of gold. Emma leaned on the railing, staring at the ripples, at the gentle current that never stopped, no matter what fell into it. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "even with everything I've lost." John leaned beside her. "Life's like that river. It keeps moving. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's rough, but it keeps going, and we keep going too." Emma closed her eyes. She inhaled, held it, then released slowly. For the first time that morning, her shoulders dropped completely. For the first time, she let herself feel the simple relief of being alive. "Thank you," she said softly, for not letting me do it alone." John smiled faintly. No one should ever have to do that alone. They stood together for a while, silent, watching the water, feeling it move, feeling themselves move. Then Emma spoke again, quieter this time. I think I can try to rebuild, step by step, even if it's hard." John nodded. Step by step is enough. And that was the moment. Not a grand gesture, not a miracle, not a dramatic revelation. Just two people choosing life over fear, presence over isolation, courage over despair. They didn't know what the next day would bring. They didn't know if every challenge could be overcome, but they knew they wouldn't face it alone. The world continued around them. Cars rolled, birds sang, a child laughed somewhere nearby. Ordinary things, extraordinary things. Because this day, this ordinary morning, had become a turning point. A day no one else would remember, but a day neither John nor Emma would ever forget. They walked away from the river slowly, side by side. Not perfect, not completely healed, but alive, and together. For the first time in years, the light felt permanent, not blinding, not overwhelming, but quiet, steady, and enough. And sometimes that quiet light is all we need to keep walking forward.
Epilogue. What we keep. Months later, John and Emma met again at the same train station where it all began. The platform was bustling, ordinary as ever, but they were changed. Emma had found work, slowly rebuilding her life. John had learned that presence, simple, patient presence, could change someone's trajectory in ways no one could predict. They didn't need dramatic statements or grand adventures. They just needed to show up, to listen, to walk together. They smiled at each other, a small, knowing smile, and for a moment, the station seemed brighter. Not because the world had changed, but because they had. And that was enough.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you in the next video.